Entertainment. I mean, of course, that stock will also be up on your screen. But with Sebi now saying that Subhash Chandra Punit Goenka cannot hold key managerial positions, this comes as quite a setback. I mean, we know Punit Goenka was slated to be CEO of the merged entity. So important to see how this really affects timelines as well.
No, absolutely. And this is, of course, our big story on Trading Hour today, because this order was pretty definitive. I mean, it's an interim order, but it's definitive in terms of what Sebi is saying. They are making some pretty serious sort of points out there in that order. And what we know is that Sebi, in its interim order itself, this is not a final order, but interim order, Sebi has basically said that Punit Goenka and Subhash Chandra cannot hold board positions, cannot hold any key managerial positions either, because Sebi feels there are certain corporate governance issues that need to be red flagged. So our colleague Surabhi Sutaria has gone through the order. I think it's a 20-page long document, if I'm not mistaken, Surabhi. So thanks for doing the hard labor for us. Tell us, what is making Sebi take note and raise this pretty big red flag?
That's right. Thanks, Surbi. So they have highlighted multiple instances of poor corporate governance practices. They have also traced transactions showing misuse of resources to pay off the promoter dues. Now, one such transaction seems to be a circular transaction where money has originated from Zee Limited and paid back to the company itself. Now, let me explain this transaction. Subhash Chandra has provided a letter of comfort to Yes Bank for a 200 crore rupee loan to SL Mobility Group, which is one of the associated companies. Now, this letter assured a fixed deposit of 200 crore from a group entity including the Zee Entertainment. Now, Yes Bank went ahead and adjusted the fixed deposit of 200 crore of Zee for meeting its obligations of the 7 associated companies. Now, post which Zee also claimed that they have received this 200 crores from the 7 promoter entities. But it turns out that a large part of these funds that have been, the Zee claim that it has been paid back, originated from Zee itself. So it seemed to be a complex circular transaction where the money originated from Zee was paid back to Zee.
Okay, got that. Surbi, thanks a lot for taking us through, some of the details of this Sebi investigation. But since we are talking about this, this is not the first time that Sebi has flagged off this kind of fund siphoning in another company. They'd also done it in another company owned by the SL Group earlier. So jog our memory on that as well. I mean, of course, I'm talking about Shirpur Gold. But take us through what had gone down then.
That's right. So earlier, Sebi had also pointed out there was fund siphoning in one of the SL Group companies, which was the Shirpur Gold Refinery, where they stated that the group promoter diverted close to 400 crore worth of assets between 2019 and 2021. Post which they said that exchanges BSE and LSE were asked to review their consent to the earlier approval of Zee-Sony merger, and then NCLAT had also directed that Zee should be heard on this matter. So that hearing was scheduled to be on June 16th. So we'll await for more clarity on post the hearing on June 16th.
It's really important, Surabhi, that you brought that up, because now we have 2 parallel issues that have come up. One is this latest Sebi letter which came in yesterday, the Sebi interim order that came in yesterday. And separately, Shirpur Gold is really important because, Pavitra, it was here where, the last sequence of events was such that NCLAT, NCLAT had sent the matter back to NCLT, saying that before you tell the exchanges to take Sebi's observations on board, allow Zee promoters to at least have a hearing. And that is a matter which Surabhi was referring to, which will come up on the 16th. So this just gets more and more convoluted in terms of the way forward for the Sony-Zee merger. In fact, I think we do have some experts now joining in. We have Mr. H.P. Ranina, Senior Supreme Court Advocate. We also have Hetal Dalal, President and COO, Institutional Investor Advisory Services, or IIAS. And we have Karan Taurani of Elara Capital to sort of talk about the company and the stock level impact. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining in on this important discussion. Mr. Ranina, I just want to start with you. Okay, I think we're just having a trouble getting through that line with Mr. Ranina. So, Hetal, let me start with the kind of perplexing problem that this is now throwing up, because we have multiple legal issues that seem to be having a bearing on the future of this impending merger, the Sony-Zee merger. First of all, how do you read through this order that Sebi came out with yesterday, the kind of allegations that have been made and the observations, rather, that have been made by the market regulator?
I think the SEBI order is fairly clear in terms of the data that it provides. It manifested from the fact that one of the independent directors on the board of Zee resigned, citing concerns over corporate governance, raising this issue about 200 crores of the Yes Bank fixed deposit. The fact, our view has always been that there are concerns over corporate governance in Zee Entertainment, and at a point we had also recommended the shareholders vote against the reappointment of Punit Goenka, given the significant concerns on related party transactions. The SEBI orders has been very specific, and to be fair, I think of late we're seeing SEBI orders which are very clear and sharp in terms of what what they're saying, and what the data actually shows. In terms of the impact on the merger, now there are two ways of looking at this, right? One is the fact that the promoters are going to fight the merger. Punit Goenka and Subhash Chandra are going to fight the order. Sorry. You've seen that in Dish TV, you've seen that in Zee versus Invesco. They are clearly going to fight this order. And how that plays out still remains to be seen. And as you rightly said, this is an interim order. So we'll have to wait till the entire story plays out. From Sony's perspective and from a merger perspective, right, there are three issues. One is that if Punit Goenka can no longer be the managing director of the merged entity, let's say SEBI's order actually goes through and they're unable to appeal it, then the question remains is should Punit Goenka be paid the non-compete fees of 1100 crores, given that he will no longer not even be in the merged entity. The other way of looking at it from Punit Goenka's point of view is that if he's no longer going to be the CEO of the merged entity, is there any case for them to have that merger? And can he just continue running Zee at a 4% equity shareholding? That again remains to be concerned. So I think the outcome of this will have its implications on how both parties see the merger going through. From Sony's perspective, independent of everything else, Zee is still a good asset. It's almost like, how Diageo, let's say, invested in United Spirits. The asset is good. There are concerns over financial leakages, about corporate governance, which you have to then, Sony would then think about what are the incremental checks and balances they put in to ensure that transaction moves. The question remains is, will the Goenka family or Subhash Chandra want to be on the other side of the merger, given what has happened? But by and large, I think at this stage, it will simply be that Punit Goenka and Subhash Chandra will fight this SEBI order to the extent that they can.
Okay, that's a pretty comprehensive, response in terms of the view that you have at IIAS. So we do have Mr. Ranina with us. Mr. Ranina, now help us, get through this, because there are multiple legalities in several cases. Like our colleague was just explaining, there is this order which has come in yesterday. There is a separate case with respect to another SL Group entity, which is this Shirpur Gold, where SEBI had asked the exchanges to take on board SEBI's earlier observations. Again, there was, allegations of fund siphoning over there, and the market regulator made some orders there. It asked the exchanges to take that on board before, going through with their approval to the merger. So that's a separate issue, and it definitely has a bearing on the future prospects of the merger. So how should we explain this? Legally, how will this move forward?
Well, legally, it will have to unravel itself step by step. The main issue is, will Punit Goenka be able to get his name cleared of certain charges which have been leveled against him? So that, I think, is the main issue. And Sony will go ahead with him only if that happens. I'm sure no foreign company would like to have a person on board who has certain charges hanging against him. So the first step would be to get Punit Goenka's name cleared of all the charges which have been levied against him. And that itself will take, I think, a few months before anything goes further. So that will be the first step. And then, of course, the other issues will have to be sorted out. Each forum will have to find a solution to whatever is pending before them, come to a decision. And therefore, you are right, it's totally a tangled bit of business. It will take months, if not years, for this to be settled in the next, in a very positive way. So one way or the other, it has to be settled, whether he's convicted, is not convicted, whether they want to go ahead with the merger, whether they want to have a different party. I think it's all in a big mess as I see it today.
All right. Okay, so this is a very interesting conversation. We have a lot more questions, but Mr. Ranina, Karan, as well as Hetal, I request you to please stay on. We're going to be back in just 2 minutes after this very short break, and then we'll take all of our questions forward on this. Hey guys, welcome back. You're still tuned into Trading Hour, and we are discussing the recent Sebi order, which has caused quite a setback to Zee Entertainment. We still have all of our guests with us, Mr. H.P. Ranina, Senior Supreme Court Advocate, Hetal Dalal, President and COO of IIAS, as well as Karan Tarani of Elara Capital. And we're continuing our discussion right now. Karan, I want to come to you right now because, I was going through your note on Zee, and of course, I do want Mr. Ranina and Hetal's replies to this as well. You are saying that in the worst case scenario, if they are not able to win this case, the merger will still go through. It will perhaps go through without them. Is that something that you think will happen soon? Because this process can be so long drawn. Do you think there is a good case for the merger to go through without, Subhash Chandra as well as Punit Goenka?
Yes, absolutely. There are legal recourses available to this. I think, Zee will go to SAT to appeal against this. Now, the outcome of SAT is going to be the deciding factor in terms of where the merger moves ahead from here on. So if at all they dismiss the plea, and if they say that, both Mr. Subhash Chandra and Mr. Punit Goenka will not be a part of the KMP or of the board, then what does Sony do? So I think even then, I don't think Sony is going to back out because I think Sony is also wanting to do the merger just as Zee has been doing. So we have seen positive commentary also. Like, if you look at Sony counterpart back in Japan, they had raised a statement that they expect the merger closure to happen in the second half of this financial year. So clearly trends are moving towards the positive side in terms of wherein Sony does not want to back out. One more reason to note here is that Sony is already aware of these developments. So whatever has been happening in terms of the reasons, in terms of why they were asked to reassess by the exchanges, whatever has been given off in terms of money siphoning or the other allegations put, on the promoter group, Sony is very much aware of these things. So unless we see a scenario wherein we reached a place or a point in this merger wherein there is no legal recourse and wherein the merger is not approved by the exchanges or by any particular authority, I don't see Sony backing out at any cost. So I think there is also high probability that the merger, could go through without them as well, if at all things fall unfavorably for the promoter group.
No, but Karan, the issue is, like our colleague was illustrating, this is not just about SEBI saying this person is, not fit and proper to run a company. The allegations seem to suggest that there's been fund siphoning, and I'm not sure if then that will make Sony to want to go back and have a relook at the deal dynamics, the financials, etc.
Yes, again, so if you remember, a couple of months back, or maybe about 6 weeks back, when the exchanges asked Zee to reconsider the merger, or probably when NCLT told the exchanges that you should reconsider the merger, Sony global counterpart statement came a couple of weeks after that, which clearly goes to show that they were aware of this point in terms of why they want to reassess. Whatever issues that were there with the promoter group, I think those were taken in the year of 2021, which means during due diligence, they had come up with these kind of issues, and despite that, they wanted to go ahead with the merger. So, which is why I'm saying all these things are nothing new that Sony's come across with. If that was the case, then there would have been some panic on some alarm, but I don't see that for now.
Hetal, you want to come in on this? How do you think this is likely to proceed? I mean, considering that they are not able to win this battle against Sebi right now, do you think that is the likely scenario where, they will go ahead with the merger without, these managerial positions being filled by the current team?
I think let's argue, for the sake of argument, let's say that Sony is in with its eyes wide open. It knows where the holes are. It knows that there is a hole. There are some of these concerns are there. They priced it into the deal contours, and therefore they're okay with it. There are two ways of looking at this now. Let's say one is, of course, therefore you expect that if the deal actually goes through, they will have checks and balances to ensure all these things don't recur. But the other way to look at it is what's in it for Punit Goenka to take the merger through. If you look at the approval they sought from shareholders, Punit Goenka continuing to be the MD of the merged entity, and the non-compete which he was going to get were significant elements of the deal contours. Now, if Sebi doesn't, because the Sebi order, let's say that's not going to happen, the deal contours have to change. And then that begs the question of whether Zee will continue to remain interested in a transaction of this nature, given the fact that they don't have majority shareholders. So I think it does put the contours of the deal up for question. It will certainly need to be renegotiated, and whether the renegotiation goes through or the merger fails remains to be seen. But I'm with Karan in terms of saying that, yes, Sony would most likely continue to remain interested in the transaction. But that is one side of the argument. I think there is a certain uncertainty around the other side. But to be fair, I think Punit Goenka and Subhash Chandra have shown themselves to be extremely tenacious. So we'll also have to wait and see how this plays out.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Ranina, so quick word with you. Just in terms of the next steps, as I said, how should we look at the other matter? This is coming up back at the NCLT, the Shirpur Gold matter. So will these two developments, take place parallelly and independently, or will the merger be hostage pretty much to both?
It's very difficult to say because NCLT is totally, zapped with pending litigation. So how soon they'll be able to take it up is difficult to say. But just one point I wanted to make from what Karan and Hetal said. I think Sony will now ask for some type of forensic audit to be conducted. Because if there are allegations of siphoning of funds, as you said, Surbi, then surely nobody will want to go ahead. And even when the stock exchange will want to know whether there is any veracity to this type of allegations. So a forensic audit will now be, I think, demanded by the shareholders. And once that goes through to find out what is the extent of the mismanagement or siphoning of funds, then only the merger can go through. Otherwise, I don't see it happening at all because there'll be so many other roadblocks, legal and otherwise, both from the SEBI and from the stock exchange.
Yeah, that's an important point as well. We need to see what other institutional shareholders of Zee do, what view they take, whether they demand a forensic audit, as Mr. Ranina said. Karan, quick last word. You're holding on to your target price and favorable view on the Zee stock?
Yes, I think for now we are holding on because there is no constructive outcome of this, that the merger will not go through or Sony is backing out. So unless some statement of this sort doesn't come in officially, I think we are holding on to our target price because the investors clearly are betting here for the longer term, the entire merged co as a company and also on the synergies front. So I don't think there's any change over there. But nonetheless, I think what we are advising investors that there's a definite delay here in terms of the merger around timelines because of so many things happening simultaneously with this NCLT hearing, which is going to happen on 16th of June, and also this new issue which has come up today.
Karan, just remind us, what is your target on this? The stock, by the way, also has recovered a fair bit from the lows of the day.
So our target price on Zee is 300 rupees. And if you look at from a valuation standpoint, it is currently trading at 10.5, 11 times P after factoring in the merged company synergies and the cash infusion. But if one were to say that the merger will not go through and if there's a legal outcome, basis that, then I think the stock could see a 15-20% downside.
Okay, got that. With that, we're going to wind down on this conversation. But Mr. Ranina, Hetal, Karan, thank you all very much for joining us and sparing the time for this conversation. That is where things stand right now on Zee. Like we were telling you, the company has also put out the official statement where they are going through the order and they will take appropriate legal action. But with that, we are going to get into a